This is Back to Back.
Yo, what's up, Back to Backers? This is Willy Joy. Welcome to the show. This is Back to Back. It's my podcast, and this means it's another Tuesday. Thank you guys for coming back and joining me. Happy to have you here. Hope everybody is doing great. My guest on the show today is Them Jeans, an LA legend, an unsung hero. Them Jeans was a huge inspiration to me because he started, as far as I know, the first podcast to really start talking to DJs and to music figures and the people who make up the fabric of the industry in LA. He started it, 5 or more years ago. It's called Tall Tales. I actually was just a guest on Tall Tales. We're going to talk a little bit more about him in a second. But first, let's get the business out of the way. I just want to make sure everybody is subscribed to Back. So look, if subscribing to a show traumatized you in the past, I just got to let you know, we're not like those other shows here, okay? We're going to take care of you. Just hit that subscribe button. Every time I post a new episode, it's going to get delivered to you. No hassle, no fuss, just pops up on your phone, on your device, on your computer, and then you get more free content, more free back-to-back every single week. Hit that subscribe button. If you really like the show, it helps us a lot if you'll leave us a rating and a review on iTunes. And if you have any questions, if you have any comments, any hate mail, any love mail, is that a word? Love mail? Any nude pictures? Nude pictures are definitely a thing. You can send all of that to backtobackpod@gmail.com. I want to hear from you guys. I'm going to respond to a lot of those emails on the air. And even if you have something that you don't want read on the air, you can just send it to me privately. I'll email you back. I try to respond to everybody who emails the show. I really like talking to you guys. And I'm serious about trying to build this show as a community. I want you guys to be a part of it. I want your input. And that's it. So let's get into today's episode with Them Jeans. We recorded this at his place in Los Angeles, where he is a lifetime Southern California resident. You know, LA wasn't always necessarily the hot spot for electronic music that it is now. And Them Jeans was there as it happened. And, I give him a lot of credit, maybe more credit than he gives himself. You can hear him chuckle a couple times when I try to compliment him. But I really do credit him with helping to foster and grow the electronic music scene, the dance music scene in Los Angeles. Together with Steve Aoki and DJ AM and Frankie Chan, he started Dim Mak Tuesdays, which became a legendary night in Los Angeles. Every big DJ played there. It was everyone's debut show. They had, just crazy guests back in the day. Daft Punk, Lady Gaga, Justice, everybody. And it was one of those weird things where LA's celebrity culture started intersecting with the underground dance culture and making this weird hybrid that could kind of only exist in a place like Los Angeles. And he was right there at the center of it, more or less running it for a while. And so it's so cool to get his perspective as someone who was there in the trenches as everything was happening, and now to hear his view on kind of how everything has evolved. And I just love this dude. He's hilarious, he's talented, he's intelligent, and you're going to get all of that. These stories are awesome. You definitely need to go check out his podcast. He does Tall Tales, which is the show I appeared on. And a lot of other DJs and music people have been on there, as well as just interesting people from all walks of life. And then he also does a food podcast called The Stew that is excellent. If you're interested in food at all, you really need to go check this out. I'm going to put the links to all of that in the description of this show. So let's get into this right now. This is me and Them Jeans, back to back. Let's go. I was really excited to come here, both to do your podcast, which by the time this airs, your episode with me will be up. So everybody should go check out Tall Tales, and not just my episode, because there's a lot of good episodes on there. And hundreds, if not thousands, but no, hundreds.
There's not thousands. Thank God.
But yeah, man, you were a huge influence on me to start this show that everyone is currently listening to. And I think you're kind of one of the unsung heroes of podcasting and music. What was the impetus to start the podcast for you, Tall Tales?
For me, it was right when I first discovered podcasts, and I would like go to the gym or ride my bike around, and I would, as a DJ, you listen to so much music all the time to the point where it's not even really enjoyable listening because it's like a job, and you're not listening to music to enjoy it. You're listening to it to figure out if it's going to be something that you would play in your sets. So I just got burnt out on music in general, and I just started diving around and digging into podcasts. And I always had an interest in conversation and comedy and things like that, but I never really had an outlet for it, and I never like wanted to do stand-up, or didn't really know anybody who was in the comedy world or was a writer or any of that. So I just went for it and just started. I just hit record and did it for an hour, and I just do it every week since.
And was your aim at the start, was it more music-based?
My aim at the very beginning was to have me and two other people who I thought were interesting of different worlds. So it'd be like one musician and one artist, or one chef and one librarian, or whatever it is, like two people that I thought would vibe well and kind of have an interesting three-way conversation. But it wasn't that sustainable because it's hard enough to get a guest every week, period. But now, you do it long enough, and then you have people hitting you up, and you have reoccurring guests and people who end up being really fun to talk to. And then that's the stuff that I really like, because there's so many podcasts that will try to have a new guest every time, and that's not necessarily what people want. People just want a collection of people who are really good at talking to talk to each other for an hour, so you can just have fun and enjoy it. And if the same people do it every time and there's no guests, then great.
Yeah, I mean, I think the ideal show is when people feel like they're hanging out with their friends, or they're hanging out with a group of friends who's including them. I think that's when it's the best. Sometimes it doesn't even matter what they're talking about.
Damn, you just described my podcast. I have no idea what we're talking about ever, but
I had a great time.
That's kind of the vibe. I mean, that's the beauty of it. You have to love a conversation.
And I think, to me, your show, when people come on and new guests, I mean, it's almost like an LA rite of passage, I feel like. You talk to so many, people from various areas, like you said, musicians or artists or chefs or anything, but they're kind of all... It's like a rite of passage, I think. They're connected in a weird way in certain social circles. And you told me when I was on your show, which I didn't know, is that you're an original California boy, right?
Original California boy.
Born in Orange County?
Born in Orange County, yeah.
How long did you live there?
I lived there until I was about 21. And as soon as I was able to leave suburban Orange County and then move up to LA, I did.
So was it not particularly exciting to grow up in Orange County?
No, it bummed me out because there's nothing to do there that has much art or culture back then. It's a little bit different now, just because of the way the earth has grown and the internet has brought cool things all over the place. But when I was 21, if I wanted to do anything that really got my blood boiling in a good way, I had to go to LA. Once I went there, then a whole new world opened up, and I just fell in love with it.
What was your childhood like musically? Were you involved in music, playing instruments?
Musically, when I was I remember when we were 10 or 12, my brother and we asked for a guitar.
Jointly?
And we got a joint axe. And I remember the first year we tried, it was a toy guitar. It ended up not being an actual guitar. It was one of those
Your parents thought they could kind of just pass that off.
It was probably one of those they're not quite ready for a real guitar, and who knows if this is going to be a fly-by-night fad kind of thing. So let's just get them this thing. And then we were instantly what the fuck This is not a real guitar. This is pointless.
This is not what we agreed on.
And then we eventually got a real guitar, and I did not teach myself how to play properly. I just kind of played. I just played it every day, and like eventually taught myself some songs and taught myself some tabs and stuff like that, but I had no formal training. I never played in bands. Every once in a while I would play guitar with my friends, and we would try to do like a Portishead style group where you would just, a friend would scratch and you would smoke weed, and then this guy would play bass, and then it would just sound horrible for 4 hours, but it was so fun.
When was music a big part of your life just in general as a kid? Were you listening to a lot of music, passionate about it?
It was a very big part of my life. It was pretty much my entire identity when I was younger. I was like super into like 80s metal when I was a kid, and like Metallica and all that shit, and Guns N' Roses, and then I got into rap music when like The Chronic came out and Doggy Style, and then I started listening to a bunch of rap music, and then I started getting into electronic music when like Napster and all the file sharing sites were up, and you could just hear anything, and you would just start finding more and more obscure stuff, and then like this Bjork song will lead you to this thing, and then like Electro Clash came out.
Right.
You would hear, there would be like the fringe electronic groups that would get me into the more straight away dance music stuff.
What was cool about Napster and those sites back in the days was that it was a very primitive form of the social recommendations that you see now. Mm-hmm. So if you found one song that one guy put up on Napster, you could see what else was in his library. Mm-hmm. And I definitely found a lot of music I never would have heard otherwise. Just by that, very caveman primitive, just literally browsing someone else's files.
Yeah, that's kind of, and it would be like your MySpace top 8 or whatever. Like what you would curate your upload folder to be a definition of who you are musically. So it's like you're gonna try your best to make your folder be the sickest folder that personifies you the most.
It was a point of pride.
If you're like, this guy has this song and this song and this song, that means we're very in tune musically, and I'm just going to download his whole folder.
Right, yeah, it's kind of like what people do.
His or hers.
That's right.
Folder.
It's like what people do with their Spotify playlist now, I think. It's very much an identity kind of thing.
Yeah, except I don't use Spotify.
No? Not feeling Spotify?
I never plan on paying for music again.
Sure. What do you use?
I use iTunes. I just listen to music on iTunes. I don't stream. I don't use Spotify. I don't use Apple Music. I definitely don't use Tidal, of course. I just download the music illegally and play it.
Yeah, I'm heavy on the torrents too. I use Spotify and Apple Music to the extent that I feel I should know what's going on to stay connected.
Yeah, sometimes I do.
Because I think the Spotify, especially the playlists, are kind of running the industry right now, or at least certain sectors of the industry.
Every once in a while, I'll dip into Rap Caviar and just see what's really pumping. And, there'll be 50 songs, and I will like 2 of them, and the rest are ranging from, like, very disappointing and upsetting to, like, just okay. And
mildly disappointing.
I mean, a lot of it is just bad, but some of it is downright like, how the fuck is this considered rap music? This is wrong.
I like strong stances.
You got to have a strong stance, man.
Got to do it. So when you moved up to LA, what was the impetus? What were you doing for work? What was your life like at 21?
Well, the first couple years were very, very fun, but also very dark. Like,
were you DJing at the time?
I was not DJing. When I was 21, like in high school, I messed around with my friends who had like a Vestax and 2 1200s, and we would listen to a lot of turntablism stuff. So like I would listen to Beat Junkies and all that stuff nonstop and smoke some pot and get into that. But then when I was 21, I was living in an apartment in Los Feliz, 5 minutes away from where I live now. No job, no money, just like scraping by to get cigarette and beer money.
Scraping by how? What were you doing for money?
I was a man of all trades. I was an extra in music videos.
Ooh.
I had
any I would have seen.
I had an agent, and I would I would make like, I don't know, maybe $400 a month doing that.
Would you get hired because you're tall?
Yeah, I would get hired because I'm tall.
Yeah.
Exactly. I was a tall, weird looking guy. And at the time I had long hair and I dressed like I was in the Strokes.
Sure.
So it was like a strong look at the time that was in demand. You can find me in the Avril Lavigne I'm With You video at the beginning.
Strong resume already.
Britney Spears, Every Time, the video where she kills herself in the bathtub.
Wow.
I play a rogue paparazzi photographer, and I have makeup on to make me look vulturous. But I was doing music videos. I was selling a little bit of weed, and I was making, and I was really into graffiti at the time. So I was painting graffiti illegally, which makes no money at all and does nothing for your life. If you play your cards right, you can become a shitty tattoo artist. Or
that's the best you can hope for.
No. Back then, now,
Right.
Now with Instagram, you can be like a cool guy.
Of course.
And do great art. And I would make like graffiti stuff. Like people would pay me to write on things, like do artwork on things. So like hats that had graffiti on it, or like write on my jacket or my bag or whatever it might be. My rent was $500 a month. I made $500 a month, and God knows how I put food in my mouth, kind of thing.
Yeah.
You just kind of made it work, and I owed people money.
Was that a stressful time, or was it kind of just one of those young times where you're just living life and not worrying about it?
It was very stressful. Like it was affecting me physically, where I didn't know how I was gonna crawl out of it. And then I met this girl at Cinespace, which is a club that I used to throw parties at with Steve Aoki, and she was like, "Hey, if you want to come in and work in the office for a week while the guy who answers the phones is at Burning Man, you can come in and you can work for a week." And I was like, "Oh my God, this is amazing. I'm going to work in Hollywood, have a job. This is great." I started doing that, and I eventually kind of worked my way into a position of like helping out doing events there. And then I just kind of slowly built up and started throwing parties. And at this point, I was not DJing whatsoever. I had no desire to.
That's interesting. That's, I feel, a different way than a lot of DJs get into the game.
I got it. I mean, I was always a music lover, and I was never able to really make music that well. I was never in a band or wanted to be in a band, really. So I'm glad that I fell into DJing, because it's like something that I really, really love doing, and I try to be good at. But I got into it purely because I would throw a party and hire people to DJ and thought they sucked and had bad taste in music and weren't good at DJing. So I could do that myself.
Did you want to be involved in music in some way in those days and just not know how?
I did, yeah. I wanted to be involved in the music world somehow, but I had no idea what to do or how to do it. And I just kind of taught myself how to throw a party, how to book people, how to make a flyer, how to do all of that stuff.
So what was the key early on? Was it just doing the jobs that needed to be done, being responsible, proving your worth to people?
No.
What's the key to sticking around when you're kind of get your foot in the door like that?
I think for me, the thing that I prided myself on was when I was throwing parties and I would work at the door because I wanted to control who would get in and not get in at my party. So a lot of people thought that I was just the bouncer, but I was the guy who created all of it, and I just wanted to make sure that good people got in and bad people didn't. And I think that was the main thing, where it didn't matter if you were cool or famous or hot or attractive. You could just be some dork or some loser or some person who would normally not get in at a club.
Right.
And I like to think that I had the ability to talk to them and decipher and figure out if they're going to be a good person to be in there or not.
Yeah, to build a community, build a scene, right?
Mm-hmm. And then if somebody didn't match that, then I would just say it costs a lot of money to get in, and it's win-win.
Right.
If $50 is too much for them, then who cares? If $50 is not too much for them, then great. I just got $50 in my pocket. But it was more of just like who is going to be a nice, respectful, good, fun person to party with, and that happened in even 10 years after the fact or longer. people still come up to me and be like, hey man, I remember when you used to let me into the club and nobody else would. I met my wife there and we love what you did or whatever it is. Or like, I was just some complete loser and now I'm cool and I have a job and thank you for helping me meet people.
That's a special time, man. And I think it was a special time all across the country. There was sort of this weird collective consciousness wave of, what would eventually be called hipsters, right? And that term has changed definitions about 100 times since then. Mm-hmm. But back in, because now we're talking about what, 05, 06, 07, something in there. Mm-hmm. All across the country, I think there were similar nights popping up.
Definitely.
In Chicago, we had my night and Flostradamus's night that was going on. There was, I talk about this on the show almost every episode, and I'm sure people are sick of hearing it.
A little too much?
Probably too much.
Talking about the heyday a little too much?
A little too much, but there was, Hollertronics in Philly, The Rub in New York, you guys out in L.A., small town DJs up in Canada, a million different spots.
All over the place. And it was a fun network where you would all help each other out, and if you were in their town, you would play their party. If they were in your town, they would play your party, and it was like a fun little community. And because I grew up with not a lot of money and not a lot of opportunity, my family didn't travel at all, and I couldn't afford to do it on my own. So it was the first time where somebody would be like, hey, come DJ in New York, and we'll pay for you to come. And I'd be like, oh my God, this is insane.
Yeah, that was...
Or like, come to any, all over the world. I got to travel because of DJing, and... Thank God.
I want to get to that point, but before we go there, let's talk a little bit more about how you linked up with Steve Aoki and started building your local scene in LA. So those early nights at Cinespace, was he involved at all, or was it just strictly your party at first?
At first, he was not involved. At first, it was me and this girl named Rachel, and we started together. She was the one who initially hired me, and it was just... I would look at the calendar every month, and every week, the Tuesday never had anything on it. So I would just be like, well, why don't we just, instead of just not being open, we can just invite some friends and play some records, and maybe we'll make $500 and it's better than nothing. So we started doing that, and nobody would come. But then some people started coming. Like the first maybe like 4 or 5 months, there would be 20 people there all night, but everyone would get wasted, and then like Interpol would come, or like Karen O would come, or Ariel Pink would DJ with the, like just weird things would happen.
Yeah,
or like Fat Lip would come DJ and like do drugs, and then and then it was around the time when Steve started DJing, and Frankie Chan was also, they were kind of doing parties together. And then the person I was doing it with, she left to go to a different place and was probably thinking that I would follow her because I was kind of under her wing, but I decided to stay there and kind of take over doing that all on my own. And then I hired Steve and Frankie. I was like, hey, I'm doing this party, and they're leaving to a different club, but I want to keep doing it here. I'll give you guys like $150 or something like that to DJ with me, and then we can like book some bands to play. And then that's where it started, and it just, went from 20 people to 50 people to Daft Punk DJing.
Right. Yeah. And let's talk about what was going on with the music scene overall at that time, because I think that was a really interesting time of this wave of indie bands that started making more danceable music. And we got into this weird zone where it was hard to define the kind of music a lot of people were making, where a band could, like you said, play a show and then go DJ a party, and that wasn't really a weird thing. Whereas, before that, I think that was sort of unheard of, or at least thought of as a strange oddity.
Yeah, that was kind of the first time where hipsters and cool people and people who were not into the clubbing scene were able to have fun clubbing, because they kind of, that perfect moment around mid-2000s was when everyone was still playing on vinyl. Serato hadn't really come out, and CDJs were not really a feasible thing in America. And so it would be one part like wedding DJ set, and then one part, like Don't Stop Believin' kind of shit, and then like a little bit of rap music and a little bit of like some DFA kind of House of Jealous Lovers kind of feel.
Early electro,
and then like Peaches and that whole kind of thing was happening over there. So, and everyone was into all of it, and you were able to, and everyone just wanted to dance. And they're like, wait a minute, like we understand that clubbing is fun now, because I grew up going to raves just because it was funny to me.
Right.
Like I didn't like any of the music really. I didn't listen to it. I didn't buy the records. But I had fun going into a jungle room and being like, oh my God, look at these people. And then going into a trance room and be like, oh my God, look at these fucking people. This is amazing.
Right.
And I would never like pay money to go to a club with a bunch of clubby people.
So that's interesting. So when you started the night, electronic music wasn't really in your head at that point.
No.
That's interesting.
When I started the night, I was watching everybody play, and I'd be like, okay, that's a good song. That's not a good song. And I was really, at the time, super into hip-hop. And my vibe was like, I want to play like hip-hop that's like, not like real hip-hop, like underground backpacker style, but a little more like the southern hip-hop kind of thing was happening.
Right.
And that's what I was into. And I was into like whatever was like the new kind of rap music, and then like the southern thing, and then like the hyphy movement thing was happening after that. So I wanted to just not be the guy who played Hot in Here.
Right.
And I didn't want to do that, but I also didn't want to play some like real backpacker for the heads kind of shit. And like in LA, nobody's really playing like Mobb Deep and Nas and all that stuff. We're playing.
And maybe that's a point that's worth bringing up too, is that era was the first time, at least that I can remember, that a DJ would play, a Southern hip hop record followed by a DFA record, followed by an old soul record. Mm-hmm. And, now I think people are very used to DJs going all over the map, and it's not really considered a unique thing or an innovative thing.
Right.
But back in those days, just the act of playing those different records one after another was sort of revolutionary and kind of rebellious.
That's literally what got me into DJing. It was half watching everybody else play and be like, okay, everyone sucks at DJing, and then I saw.
You seem very judgy at this point.
I was judgy. Well, I was judgy because I was jealous, because I'm throwing a party where I'm like putting my own money up on the line. I'm lucky if I break even, but every time the person who I think was a bad DJ is getting a couple $100 in their pocket.
Right.
Regardless of if it rained that night or if there was a competing party across town that took all of your crowd or anything, they still had to pay.
Or if it was a big name, sometimes, especially the band guys, you'd get a big band guy to come in and they'd be a terrible DJ. Mm-hmm. That happened to me a few times throwing parties.
Oh, that happens a lot.
I remember one time, this was at the time the biggest booking I had ever done when I was throwing a monthly party in Chicago. For our 2-year anniversary, we got the XX to come DJ. And this was before, they were pretty big, but not quite as massive as they are now. Mm-hmm. But it was still a big deal to get them. And it was right around the time when people were figuring out that Jamie XX was kind of a cool DJ on his own and had some solo stuff going on. And they showed up late, and the woman in the group, I forget her name now, proceeded to DJ the entire set while Jamie XX sat in the back and smoked cigarettes. And she was okay, but it wasn't what anyone wanted to see. And man, I was so mad.
That sucks. I've played with XX before, but it was always Jamie.
Yeah, I still to this day don't know why it wasn't that day, but what can you do, man?
Sometimes you get burned, baby. Burned by the X.
That sounds like an STD. But any particular bad burns you had on early shows? Either somebody playing a bad set or just, some other disaster, losing your ass kind of night.
I've had so many ass losing nights, and it's just a pain in the ass. But like those are things that. I don't know if I can. A lot of it really was rain related.
Sure.
That was always something, because in LA, like you grew up in Chicago, it rains all the time. In LA, it rains 7 days a year.
And people freak out.
And if you throw a party on a night where it's raining, like nobody's going to it. But the people that do go to it end up getting scary drunk.
Right, of course, because then they don't want to leave the club.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so those parties are always the ones where like, okay, I have the worst hangover and I made the least amount of money. I probably lost money. Those were the bad ones. But I think you kind of learn that there's so many of those times where like, oh, I guess I'm over. My life is ruined. I owe this guy $1,000 and I don't have a lot of money and this is fucked up. And then I had so many like, what am I going to do moments that I've completely forgot about. And you just, you have enough of those and then you start realizing that life is going to move on probably as long as you're not like a drug addict or something.
Right. Well, and shout out to promoters in general, man, because promoters get the most shit and for my money, they have the hardest job or the most stressful job out of any of the sides of the DJ game. Mm-hmm. I was a terrible promoter, always. I was never a good promoter. I never enjoyed doing it. And then I see people who are really good at it. Even some of my friends now, are running major festivals and doing incredible things. And it's just not a skill I possess. It's like magic to me. I give those guys so much respect.
Thank God it's something that I was able to clumsily stumble into because I was okay at it when I was not good at most things. I didn't go to college. I was not very book learned, and I was not very business savvy or minded or responsible with any of that at all. So
kind of just a blessing that it came into your life when it did.
Yeah, much like DJing or any other fringe career path that I've stumbled onto.
Well, so when did you stumble onto DJing and discover you had a talent for that?
I stumbled onto those two things are very mutual from each other, or mutually different, apart from each other. Yeah, I got like the classic, buy some shitty Craigslist turntables and hit the dollar bin at Amoeba and start messing around for a while, and then I was fine, and then for a while I was DJing where I would do half. I would play on vinyl only. But then all the songs I didn't have on vinyl, I would put on my iPod, and then I would play that on like the auxiliary, luckily it didn't matter that I was not able to mix the songs together very well because everyone was just wasted, and it was fine, and that was the style back then. And then I started taking it a little bit more seriously as time went on, and I got Serato and was able to really have the full musical spectrum at my fingertips. Without, all illegally, of course.
Of course.
And then with Serato, I was able to really start playing around and doing some weird stuff.
And were you DJing at your Tuesday night party kind of from the get-go?
No. I was probably doing that party for a year before I started ever DJing there. And I would DJ a little bit here and there around town. I would play like friends' house parties and like little bar gigs here and there with other friends, like getting paid $75 or something like that, and having the time of my life, just getting wasted and playing ludicrous songs or whatever it was.
Absolutely.
And that was really fun. But then once I got Serato and once I had all the songs I ever wanted and I could manipulate them and I could easily organize them and build playlists, then it really started opening up my creative brain on like what I could do to push things. And I never was a scratch man, so I never really got into scratching because when I learned a lot of stuff from AM.
Right.
And he really like kind of took me under his wing, and we would hang out and bond about stuff because we got along really well because we're two completely different styles of DJing, and obviously like everyone could learn a million things from AM. And I'd never really realized, but he would say like, "Oh man, like I'm learning weird things about DJing from you because you're approaching it from a completely different angle." Like,
sure.
I never grew up. I didn't do all the normal DJ things that normal DJs go through.
Right.
I didn't, I didn't
came at it.
I didn't spend 15 years buying doubles. I was doing the other elements. I was painting graffiti and doing pot, but like
doing pot, yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about how that team assembled of you and AM and Aoki and Frankie Chan. Is there a moment that you can mark where you started feeling like this was more than just some friends playing some music to some other friends, where it became more of a an entity and an identity and a scene.
Yeah, I mean, once I was doing the party with Steve and Frankie, the three of us.
How did you meet them, by the way?
I met them because they started coming to my party, and I would just talk to them and befriend them, and they would do little parties at different clubs and bars around town, and I would be like, hey man, you guys seem like the right vibe and similar fit. Why don't you guys you guys have a Wednesday night party or whatever it was, so why don't you do a Tuesday night party?
What was Aoki like in those days? What's your memories of him?
Aoki in those days, it was very similar to me because we both had a similar childhood in terms of growing up in Orange County and growing up straight edge. We never like drank or smoked or did drugs until later in our life.
I didn't either, actually. Yeah,
it was later for him than me. So when I never had so much as a drag of a cigarette until I was like 19 or 20. When that happened and the doors opened up, I went in heavy. Like,
right.
I was like, oh my God, what was I missing out on for all these years? And then I would go out all the time. I would get drunk all the time. I would do drugs. I would smoke cigs and do bad stuff all the time.
Yep.
And then Aoki did the same thing, but it happened to him when he was like 26 or something instead of 19. So during those times is when he was just discovering like, oh my God, drinking is fun.
Right.
And he would just, he's such a turbo guy, and he's always going a million miles an hour. So he would just get really, really drunk and get really, really crazy, and just, while he was DJing, he would just be screaming and jumping around and sweating and stage diving, and that energy is what made everybody pay attention to him.
Could you tell, even in those early days, that he was maybe destined for big things, or was he just another crazy kid at that point?
I think so, but at that time, the DJing was really secondary to his record label. He was all about the record label, and that was his main goal and focus, was to just push that into, having that be his number one business.
Sure, and not him as the figurehead necessarily.
Right. It was not overnight either. It took a few years for him to realize, like, oh, this DJing thing is actually taking precedence, and it's going to be my main thing.
Right.
And luckily at that point, both things had grown enough to where he was able to employ other people to handle the label while he pursued his DJ stuff. But he was always the guy who would kind of make things happen, and then I was kind of the one who would execute them. When him and Frankie had their differences and kind of had a falling out, and it was just Steve and I, it was kind of a good 1-2 punch of like, when he needed me to do the stuff that he didn't want to do, I would be there, and vice versa.
Idea and execution.
Yeah. And we made a good team. I mean, there's no way in a million years that him and I would be like business partners and friends and all that stuff, but we just got kind of crammed together, and it ended up being a good business relationship for a long time.
Well, and what you guys built in LA, I mean, I don't know what the current state of dance music would be like without that outpost out here. I mean, at the time, I can't even really think of anyone else in LA who was doing something that would become, such an influential piece of dance music history, I don't know if you credit yourself with that, but I do.
No, I don't.
No, not really?
No, not really. I mean, sometimes I know that it's.
You know what I'm getting at, though.
I know what you're getting at. I know that it's important and it's special, but it was just such. I think it'll take a long time for that to really sink in.
And I'm sure you didn't think that's what you were doing at the time either. It's always harder.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
I mean, but what like crazy stuff happened at the time, but it's weird. Like, when did you watch that Jimmy Iovine and Dr. Dre?
The Defiant ones.
The Defiant ones.
Yeah.
So like you're watching that, and it's talking about like, here's how hip hop formed in LA, and here's how this guy moved to LA and took over the industry and all that stuff. And that happened 30, 40 years ago, to where now it's like a legendary thing. But at the time, there's probably a lot of people who were like, this shit's kind of corny. I don't really fuck with it, whatever. And I feel like we're still in that age range for that time, like the mid 2000s world. Not enough time has passed to where it's reached like this legendary legacy status. It still kind of has like when I look back at 2007, all I can think about is like, oh my God, I can't believe I was wearing that. And I'm sure the same, Dr. Dre feels the same way when he looks at a picture of him in the 80s with a Jerry curl and some purple velour jumpsuit thing. He's like, oh my God, what was I wearing?
Of course.
But he's also like, okay, now I'm old enough and I'm a boss, so it's fine.
And you did have some pretty legendary moments that I think could be historically significant. I mean, you were talking earlier about Daft Punk jumping on at a party.
Yeah.
I know you guys had early appearances from Justice, from kind of a million names that are now luminaries, headlining stadiums.
Mm-hmm.
Any other notable debuts or crazy guests that pop out to you in those days?
I was actually just looking at old flyers a couple of days ago.
And let's, just before we get into this was a small venue. I want to make that clear. Because I've been to that spot. I mean, it felt like a house party. These were not giant shows.
Yeah, there's 2 rooms. The main room fit, I think the capacity was like 300, but then we would fit like 750 people in there.
Right.
And then the small room was like, the capacity was probably 100 and we would fit 400 in there or something.
Right. So for our listeners, just keep that in mind as you hear these stories.
So I remember, and Charlie XCX, I remember, I totally forgot that she played, and we booked her and I paid her $100 and nobody knew who she was, and she had like a horrible show and nobody watched. And I remember she left. She just ran. She just like, when her set was done, she was like one of those things where like she was already signed in Europe and like had a following, and like this is her first show in LA and nobody knows who she is. So she's just like, she's not used to crickets. And I think like 3/4 of the way through her set, she's just like, fuck this, I'm leaving. And I never ended up paying her. Because she had just left. And I remember, and I think like 2 years later, somebody emailed me like, hey, do you have that like $100 for Charlie XCX? And I was like, I don't think so. And then they just never wrote back.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, I feel like that was probably not
She's doing
her top
fine now.
concern. Yeah.
We had like the first Lady Gaga performance, or like one of the first.
In LA or in anywhere?
In LA.
Okay.
Well, it was right when she came out, and Just Dance,
yeah,
had just came out, but it hadn't really hit yet. And the label was like, okay, you guys were like, all the labels were in LA or still are in LA. So I would get a call from whoever, all like once a week, would be like, hey, we got this person, can they come through Cinespace and play? And sometimes I'd be like, like sometimes it'd be horrible. And sometimes I'd be like, yeah, that sounds hilarious.
Right.
like Will.i.am would DJ once a month. Will.i.am is a really nice guy, but I don't really love him as a DJ, I guess.
I got kicked off the decks for Will.i.am once.
But when Will.i.am, it's just funny. Even if you don't like Will.i.am, it's funny to be in a club where like this band is gonna, like Block Party is gonna play, and then Flostradamus is gonna DJ, and then fuck it, I guess Will.i.am is gonna play for 45 minutes, and it's gonna suck, but it doesn't matter because it's Will.i.am, and then like maybe somebody funny will come. But Lady Gaga came and she played, and she already had the big major label deal, so it was like a full club takeover. Like they had to come in and check all the sound before, and like her management and wardrobe and agents and stylists and makeup and catering and all the shit was there. And like we didn't have to pay her any money. And like her stage show was like way too overdone and way too much production for our little tiny room. And the crowd just kind of sat there and stared at her like, what the fuck is going on? And I remember very vividly when the green room was basically just this glass encased VIP room that had a curtain that you would draw, and it had no lock on it. It had no anything. It was just like a swinging door, like when you walk into a bank or something. And I opened the door to be like, hey guys, you're on in 5 minutes or something like that. And I opened the door, and Lady Gaga's just sitting there topless, and I saw her boobs. I don't remember them that vividly anymore. But everybody, I just kind of opened the door like, hey guys, 5 minutes. And then everyone in the room was like, get the fuck out of here. What the fuck is wrong? Like they had no idea that nobody knew what was going on. And then from then on, it was just like and they like had this really overblown show where her dancers like picked her up and carried her around and
trying to do an arena show in this 300 person space, more or less.
Yeah. It was funny though, but like that stuff didn't matter, like because there was 2 rooms. So if you're watching Lady Gaga do a horrible show in one room, your night is not over because you can be like, I'm just gonna walk into the other room, and then some bro like is going to be playing a song that you like.
Right. And when did DJ AM come into the picture? Because he ended up being a pretty big partner of your guys as well, right?
Yeah, that's when I really fell in love with DJing. He would play these parties for Brent Bolthouse. At the time, he was like the big club promoter who would do like all the Hollywood celeb parties, and now his company is called SBE, which owns a bunch of clubs and restaurants, and it's huge all over the world. But he would book AM to play, and I would be like, "Hey, I'm the guy who does Cinespace. Can I come in?" And sometimes the door girl would let me in, and I would just sit there by myself, watch AM play all night long, and be like, holy shit, this is crazy.
Yeah.
And then we started talking to each other, and we became friends, and then he'd be like, hey, can I come check out your party? And we'd be like, oh yeah, of course, come on, man. And he would come and hang out, and he would just sit in the booth and be like, man, you guys are fucking crazy. What are you guys doing here? Aoki couldn't DJ, I couldn't DJ. You know, like we would sort of mix songs together, but it was just a drunken mess.
Yeah.
And he would be like, let me get on. And we're like, oh shit, you mean it? And then he would come and just destroy it. And everyone would go crazy. And then he was like, oh my God, this is fun playing for people who actually appreciate it and not just like bottle service, Paris Hilton people who don't give a shit.
Yeah, because he was a music lover first and foremost, for sure.
Yeah, big music lover. And, you know, it's like when you're DJing and you're playing for an audience where whatever you're doing is lost on them, it's no fun at all, no matter how much money you're getting.
Right.
You just kind of have to push through it for that check. And then he would be like, hey, Jason, I'm going to come DJ tonight. And I'd be like, okay. And then I would tell somebody like, hey, your set is now going to be 20 minutes and my set's now going to be 20 minutes because AM's going to play. And then he would be like, hey, the room that I DJ in sounds like shit, so I'm going to call my rental guy and he's going to bring in a bunch of speakers for that room, and he would just pay for it.
Wow.
And he would pay this guy, so not only would he DJ for no money, but he would pay this guy like $500 to bring in a bunch of gear, so when he played, it sounded really good.
Right.
So now every time AM would come and play, we'd be like, oh yes, now it's going to be good because it's going to sound even better. And then it happened so much to the point where we had to just start hiring this guy every time.
Right.
Because now the standard had been raised. I would DJ for him and be like, I can't scratch and I'm not good at doing any of that crazy DJ stuff, but what I can do is like play 2 songs together for a long time and like maybe something funny will happen, or like maybe like I'll discover something weird, like the whole mashup style of DJing. And he would be like, holy shit, that's crazy. Why are you playing songs together for like 2 minutes at the same time? That like, what's wrong with you? I'm like, I don't know, I can't scratch. Yeah. And then we would just hang out and have fun. And he would be like, what song is that? You got to send it to me. What song is that? You got to send it to me. Let me send you this, blah, blah, blah. And we would just trade music all the time. We'd go over to his house and we would just trade music. That's all we would do.
Yeah, and I think at a certain point, from an outsider's perspective, you know, coming up in Chicago, at a certain point, there was nowhere I wanted to play more than the Dim Mak night in LA on a Tuesday. And that was a big goal when I was kind of starting off my career. And it became, not just for me, but I think for kind of all the DJs in that scene, especially a lot of us who were on the holler board and all of that, it was such a touchstone. I mean, I never even really got to do the Dim Mak night on Tuesday until much later when it was sort of on the decline. I didn't get to play it till probably, I don't know, 2011, 2012.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And it was... The night I played was amazing.
So that's probably when I was not really involved with it anymore.
I don't think you were. And Steve actually came back and did a surprise set the night I was playing, which made it an amazing night because I had just released a record on treble and bass, and I was shooting a music video in the club that night for it. And then he showed up, which of course made everyone go crazy. Yeah. And we got some amazing footage of me and him, even though it was, you know, past the heyday, just being able to be in that room and play for a packed house. And especially with Steve being there, it felt like a it felt like a special accomplishment to me. But let's talk a little bit about your DJ career, because I think at a certain point that started taking off and you started traveling around. At a certain point, I think I was even following your path and being like, man, I wish I could play the places them jeans are playing. How did it start off for you? Who was the first person to bring you out of town?
I really have no idea.
Do you know the era you started touring?
It must have been like maybe 2006 or 7, I guess.
Yeah.
It would mainly be like closer things like San Francisco, like Vin Sol, like those guys would come bring me up, and when Morse Code was in San Francisco, and they would come and play mine, and I would play theirs, and like San Diego and things like that, and then New York. We would get booked as like the Cinespace guys or whatever, and I would go and play and open for Steve and AM, and we would play all over the place. And
oh, so you guys were doing kind of like a package tour at that
sometimes,
time?
yeah. Like we did a few tours, and like we went to China, like we did like an Asian tour with them, and I did like a Japanese thing and a European one with Cobra Snake.
What was that like in those days? Did they know the music you were playing? Because I think now, today's EDM DJ can go kind of anywhere and the music is pretty universal. But you guys were playing all over the spectrum and kind of interesting hip music. Would it translate when you would go overseas? How did those tours go?
It did not always translate overseas, absolutely. But I think it was really important because you kind of learn as a traveling and touring DJ, especially now, like every country is so different and you have to really learn how to play it. Like real, true professional touring DJs, like they know every country in Europe is different than each other and what you have to play and what you cannot play and how you're going to bomb or not bomb. And the only way you learn that is by going to Germany and having a horrible set.
Right.
And you just have to be smart enough to be like, oh my God, everything I knew about DJing in Helsinki is wrong, right. which was zero.
Right.
Like when I went to Japan, the people that I would DJ with, every song they played I'd never heard before. And I'd be like, okay, I guess. And the crowd would be like, yeah, this is all the music that we love.
Right.
And I had never heard any of it because it's all just like weird Japanese shit that I've never heard of. And then I would DJ and I'd be like, I guess you liked it, maybe? and they'd be like, good job, great. And I was like, what was it? I don't know.
Because they're so polite, yeah.
And that's something that I always kind of deal with when you're, because every DJ should read the room. And that's like a big thing that a lot of people don't do because they're like, I have my set, I'm going to play it, and that's just how it's going to go. And like, I think a part of being a real true DJ is knowing when it's not working and pivoting and trying to make the best of a bad situation instead of just like, this is what I do, man. Take it or leave it.
Right.
That translates a lot for different crowds because different crowds react differently. And when I'm playing in LA back in those crazy days, like you would know instantly if they liked it or not, because if they liked it, they're pulling their hair out and doing a backflip off of a stage. And if they don't like it, they're not doing that.
Yeah.
But like I'll play like a bottle service, fancy club, and I could kill it, and the crowd, because they're not stage diving people,
right.
They're not going to show me whether they're liking it or not. So you really have to truly read the room. You have to look in people's eyes.
Yeah,
and
the subtle signs.
Yeah, the subtle signs, and then you still. I mean, like I've been DJing professionally for a long ass time now, and I played a club 3 weeks ago where they're like, hey man, great job, you killed it. And I'll be like, I have no idea if I'm doing a good job or not.
Well, and at that time when you were traveling around, touring overseas, what was the goal to kind of build a touring career? Did you think that was maybe the next step, was them jeans as a performer? I think as a producer, because you started making records as well at that time, right?
Yeah, I started making records even though I wasn't very good at it. And because that's just what you're supposed to do, I guess. But I just really loved doing it, and I never wanted it to end. So
sure.
Whatever I could do to get more bookings and travel more and get paid to have a blast, I just wanted to keep doing it. And luckily, it worked for a while, and I was able to ride that wave for a while.
Well, and I was looking at your discography last night to kind of refresh my memory, and you had more releases than I remembered, man, for a string of years there.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's a weird thing that I've been like thinking about lately a lot, is that like I don't think I'm really able to make music anymore.
Really?
Like every time I sit down with my computer and I have an idea and I try to execute it, it just doesn't. For like the last 2 years, I haven't been able to make anything.
What happened? Why not?
I have no idea.
Really?
I have
Just
no clue.
one day it wasn't there anymore?
Yeah. But maybe I think a big thing for people to learn is like when it's time to give up on your dream and figure out a way to have that dream come out in a different way, which is how I started DJing.
Right.
It's like I'm probably not going to be in the next Radiohead or whatever I want it to be, but I can DJ and do my own version of that.
Well, that's a pretty strong statement. I feel like that's worth exploring. Is giving up on, but it's smart. I know exactly what you mean to give up on a dream and to pivot into another, something else that makes you happy, something else that makes sense in your life.
Yeah, we're living in a time where there's more opportunity to do things ever. So like now,
I tell people that all the time, especially people who want to get into the music industry. I think a lot of people listening to this show are probably aspiring producers or DJs or some way involved in that world. And in their mind, much as it was in my mind back when I was coming up, I think it's easy to fall into the trap of just thinking, I have to be the next Skrillex to be successful, or whatever your version of Skrillex is, whatever you look up to, when the reality is there's so many ways to make a lane for yourself in the music industry and to have music be the central part of your life, something that pays your bills, something that fulfills you, but it's not always what you think.
Yeah, there's only going to be a handful of Skrilli per year.
Is that the plural, the proper English?
That's right. But there's so many jobs that need to be done in something that you love.
Well, that's a perfect segue into something that I think we have to talk about, which is when you taught Zac Efron how to DJ.
Exactly.
Talk a little bit about it. What was the movie? How did it come about? How did you become a DJ teacher to the stars?
The movie is called We Are Your Friends. It's a film starring Zac Efron and Emily Ratajkowski.
A widely panned, bizarre calendar entry in the timeline of EDM.
Calendar entry. Yeah, it was basically the guy who directed it and co-wrote it is Max Joseph, the gray-haired guy from MTV's Catfish.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
Yeah, he was the guy who made the movie. And he had this idea. Basically, the bummer for it was the idea for this, when he showed me the script and I was kind of checking it out, and like I met with him very early on and he was like, hey, you're a DJ. I've heard people recommended you to me. I need somebody to be like a DJ consultant on the film to make sure everything looks the way it's supposed to look. And like people are saying things that DJs would say, and making sure that like the script and the lines are not fucked up.
So, I mean, I never actually saw the movie. I only saw previews and heard tell, but correct me if I'm wrong. The basic premise was making an EDM culture movie that was sort of a tale of, a rags to riches guy becomes DJ star tale.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, it sucks because like the original version of the film and the script was actually pretty good. But then once it was all created and said and done, and then it got purchased by Warner Brothers for distribution, and then they kind of like turned it into what it wasn't. But it originally had like a real super like DFA kind of feel to it. Was the original vibe. And then it ended up being like an EDM explosion by the end of it. But when we were like sourcing songs for it was all like, like Juan McLean kind of shit. And that was the vibe that they originally wanted, but then it got turned into something else. But yeah, it's like four bros who grow up in the valley. It's very much about the valley. And then one of them has the dream of being a music star, and it's all about it's mainly about like male friendship and like coming of age as a teen trying to make it in LA, which is something I could relate to.
Sure.
As growing up in the other valley. And then there's some fun. There's the older sensei and the young guy who wants to become Skrillex, and the older sensei is like, hold on, before you can't do that. You have to learn the fundamentals first. And like he has a home studio, and he's like, here's how you play real drums, and here's a real synthesizer, and not just like your Ableton shit. So that part was like, they try to do a good job with that. And there's like a fun love triangle. Somebody dies.
Sure.
They do drugs, all that shit. But they hired me to basically train Zac Efron to appear to look like a DJ. I didn't really have to teach him how to actually DJ because it's impossible to teach somebody to DJ in 2 weeks.
You're right. What did the lessons consist of? Would you go over to his house?
I went over to his house. Luckily, he only lives 5-10 minutes away from me, and I would just go over to his house, and we would, hang out and drink alkaline water, and I would eat his expensive snacks, and I would be like, okay, you have to buy all this gear, and we would set it up in his house, and I'd just be like, here's how you DJ, what kind of music do you like? And he would play me stuff that he was into, and right around that time was when Bobby Shmurda, hot N-word, was really in the streets.
Right.
So we would bond over like rap music where like I have to teach you how to DJ. And I would just basically be like, this is how you would move your hands if you were DJing, and this is how you would move the fader and the cross thingy and do this and that. Don't touch that button because nobody ever touches that button.
Right.
And just kind of all those things. And then...
That's so interesting.
But the cool part that I really like, I got to, become friends with Zac Efron and spend a summer with him, which was a strange and amazing time in my life. But the thing I liked the most about it was I did a lot of the music supervision and sound design for it.
Oh, interesting.
So they would cut a scene for a movie where he would mix like 5 songs, and you would kind of, they would show the audience watching the film, this is what a DJ can do, where like nobody's dancing, and he'll start off slowly and then work its way up into like a frenzy, like the ideal DJ set where you just have them eating out of the palm of your hand, which you have experienced as a DJ before.
Sure.
Arguably no better feeling when you're really working in the pocket at full speed.
Yeah, that's the feeling I'm addicted to. It's for sure, for real. That's for sure what I'm chasing.
So there's a scene in the movie where they're explaining that, and it doesn't come across quite as authentically and cool as you would hope it would, but it does it does its best for a major production, popcorn movie. And for that scene to be like, I would mix in Ableton, and I would get to cut to video, and I would get to like pan things around and move things around, and while we would record like hours and hours of him just moving every knob and every crossfader, and they would cut it in, and I would sit there in the editing room with them and be like, all right, pull up him bringing out the bass on channel 2 of the mixer, and they would pull that up. And that's when I would go into Ableton and draw an envelope to reduce the bass and bring it down exactly to the frame.
Right.
And that kind of shit was, and I was like, it was very difficult to do because films are constantly being edited and changed, and it kind of has the butterfly effect of where in Ableton the audio warps and you can move it for whatever BPM you want. It's going to all stay the same.
Right.
But when you're cutting it to video, that's not warped. And every time you move anything a millisecond, it changes everything.
Right.
And you have to start over from scratch.
Right.
So I had a lot of useless hours spent creating this house of cards of like, everything is just barely hanging on by an inch. And like, oh my God, I was like, I'm the first person who's ever done this. No one's ever done this, like been hired to DJ live for a movie in post-production with the proper DJ tools and the way a DJ would do it and all these things.
Yeah, that's such a fascinating idea.
That's what really got me excited. I was like, oh my God, I wish I could do this every day because it's so fun and rewarding. But then obviously the only time I'm ever going to get hired to do that again is if they make another DJ movie.
Well, do you think music supervision and you said you were picking the songs and all that, is that something you would want to get into?
I would love to get into music supervision, but then much like many other things in this world, it's the kind of the don't meet your idols kind of thing.
Right.
It's the people that do it are really good at what they do, but more than half of the job is a bummer.
Sure.
Like the surface level is like, oh, I know about music and it'd be a great thing to put this David Bowie song on this scene right here would really flow together well. And that's the tip of the iceberg. The other 90% is schmoozing, business, negotiations, favor for a favor, backdoor record label deals.
Right.
You have to put this song on this other soundtrack if I do this for you. And it's just like this whole network that you have to be able to work with. Like Scott Veneer, Broke Mogul on like social media. He's the guy who does Entourage and Ballers and all this stuff. And he's really good at it, because that's all he does all day.
Right. That kind of brings me to my last point, which is that I think in 2017, as a working DJ, a touring DJ, EDM or otherwise, you have to be a man of many trades or a woman of many trades, in that performing the music isn't just the only thing anymore. Whereas in the heyday 10 years ago that we were talking about, if you could play an interesting set, that was enough to get you booked. That was enough for people to know who you were.
It didn't matter if you had crippling social anxiety.
Right, which many of us did and some still do. And it's something I struggle with. And when I was on your podcast, we talked a little bit about you being burnt out on the current wave of DJing and the people who are playing the festivals and the quote-unquote EDM scene. Where do you see yourself fitting in to the DJ world at large at this point?
I mean, at this point, it's something that I think about a lot, because in 2007, when I'm wearing some all-over print hyphy shirt and like chugging vodka and like doing a stage dive with Steve Aoki, I'm sure everybody who was 10 years older than me DJing were looking at me like, the fuck are these people doing? This is not DJing. This is stupid. Just the same way I will look at, whatever bullshit DJ people are DJing now. I'm like, oh my God, this is not DJing. This is bullshit.
Do you think you just aged out of it?
Yeah, I think I just aged out of it for sure. And that's just going to be going on for the dawn of time, the same way, whoever 10 years before the Beatles were like, who the fuck are these guys?
Right.
What is this shit? And it's just, certain eras are legacy eras and certain eras are not. I think now the way I fit into it, I still play, a good amount, a couple times a week, I would say. And it's just, I still have hope and faith that there's people out there who do appreciate that. And you do have to be not only good at DJing, but you have to look cool on social media, and you have to, be good at marketing yourself and put out mixes and artwork and do funny videos and whatever other bullshit people have to do nowadays in order to keep their lights on as a working DJ or entertainer. And some people can adapt to it and some people can, and some people choose to do less of it than others.
Right.
Some people choose to play the game a little bit less than others. But I think I still have faith that there's people out there who consider like, hey, you're the right person for the job and we're going to pay you to do that job, and I'm grateful for that. It's not something that I'm going to do forever, but it's something that I love doing very much, and I don't want to stop anytime super soon.
Yeah. Well, and you've diversified kind of what we were talking about before. Now you've got not only the Tall Tales podcast, but at least one more podcast, right? Or is it two?
One.
Okay.
One mainly.
Which is a cooking-based, a food-based
food-based podcast called The Stew. And I've always been into food parallel to my whole DJ life, and there wasn't really much like, the time of DJing before computers and Serato, and there wasn't much you could do in the food world unless you were a cook or had a restaurant. But now there's a lot of other things you can do, and I do a food podcast, and I do other food-related things, and do some writing and hosting of events and branding and marketing and weird little things like that. So that kind of rounds out the point that we were making before of like, if your dream is to be Anthony Bourdain, or if your dream is to be Steve Aoki or whatever, it might happen. It's a very small chance, but there's a lot of other things that you can do that are pretty close to that.
Right. And related to that.
And the sooner you realize that, the sooner you'll be able to have a nice life where you don't have to have a 9-to-5 job that you hate.
100%. And that's the real dream, right? I mean, that's the real success as far as I'm concerned.
Yes. Sorry to all of our listeners who have 9-to-5 jobs that they hate.
Well, yeah, but I think that's just a good way of saying you can do something else if you want. And as somebody who is still firmly in the DJ world, in the EDM world. And I think it's really cool to be able to connect with you. I appreciate you coming and doing this with me, man. Being on your show was a big moment for me because that was an inspiration. You've been an inspiration to me kind of all along the way. I felt like I was one step behind you the whole time. And this is really cool, man. It's cool to connect with you. So thank you.
My pleasure.
Absolutely.
Thank you for having me. It's I'm glad we could do this, and I'm glad you're doing a podcast, and I hope more people are inspired to get out there and talk. I mean, it makes you much better at talking.
That's right.
You get to meet a lot of people, and you have an excuse to become friends with people that you might not be able to become friends with.
Them jeans, Jason. Thank you, man.
Thank you, Willy.
Peace. All right, that's the show. Thank you so much to Them Jeans for sitting down with me, having me over at your place. And this was a full circle deal. I really loved having him on the show, and I was honored to be a part of his show. If you haven't heard me on his Tall Tales podcast, I'm going to put that link in the description of this episode. You can go click it, check it out. It's a great podcast. My name is Willy Joy. You can follow me on all social media at Willy Joy. You can email me backtobackpod@gmail.com. If you want me to read something on the air, I'll read it. If you want me to keep it between us, keep it on the low, we can do that too. If you just want to tell me, about a weird lump on your back, I'll probably just tell you to go to a doctor, but why not? And that's it. Another one. We're done. We did it, guys. My name is Willy Joy. I love you guys. Thank you for listening. I'll be back next week with another crazy guest. This is Back to Back. Have a good week. Peace.